I want to hear cannons. Three-step drop, goes on the end zone. Caught ball, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans reaches up with one hand and grabs it in. Here they go again. Tempo mode, dropping the throw. Winston out again, throws to the left. It's intercepted at the 35. Outside the numbers to the 40, to the 35, to the 30, to the 25, to the 20, to the 15-10. Mike Edwards, touchdown Tampa Bay. That's the dagger, my friend.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty. Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I am your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucks fan himself from BucksNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. Monday Night Football in Raymond James Stadium puts an end to the 2022 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 30-14, your final score in that one. As far as the game goes, we're going to try and break some of it down, but at the end of the day, I don't know how much there is to say. We all saw what happened. And as far as the 2022 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go, Evan, I don't think I ever want to watch this football team ever again. We'll weigh out the pros and cons, obviously, over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour. But, I mean, this was just an exhausting season, and we have seen much worse from this franchise.
You've seen much worse, but I think you haven't. You've seen much worse, but the expectations haven't been there, and I think that's what have a lot of people, up in arms, that the expectations were different. If they, and I've said this a lot, if Tom Brady never unretired, and they were with Blaine Gabbert right now, 8-9 in a playoff game, you would consider that a success. Like, I don't see how anybody could be really upset with that. And if Todd Bowles was the head coach, they'd say, man, Todd Bowles did a pretty good job. But with the, Tom Brady being on your team comes the expectation that you're going to be able to win a lot of football games. And they did, kind of. They obviously won enough to make it to the playoffs in a crap division. And then you kind of got embarrassed on a national stage, a team that was just better than they were. So I think that the expectations, yes, you've seen worse teams. Like, this is not the worst Bucks team, but I think it could be one of the most disappointing. Like, I think it definitely could. And the 2022 season, you can kind of just, flush this one away, I think, for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, and joke's on us for buying back into this team at multiple times throughout the season. I'm not going to lie to you. We said on this very podcast what felt like 7 or 8 weeks ago, maybe even longer now, the Bucs are bad until they're not. And there were moments this season where they would go out and they would win a game convincingly, right? Like, they could run the ball. Tom Brady was kind of throwing the rock around in Germany against Seattle, right? Like, week 1, they were able to run the ball, and that led to the offense being a little bit more effective, but they really were never able to play that way throughout the rest of the season, right? 1 or 2 games I can think of where their sole game plan to focus on running the ball more actually paid off. And the story of the 2022 Buccaneers, we'll obviously get much more into this on our review show, which is going to be next week, but they just didn't score enough points. You talk about what was disappointing this year. People haven't wanted to give Todd Bowles the credit I think he deserves. 8-9 in a division title. I know it was a terrible division, but that is still his first season as head coach with this Bucs squad. Now, if he finished,
is 8-9 acceptable though?
I mean, it was enough to get a division title and a playoff spot, which is enough to secure him a job for 2023. So according to the Glazers and Jason Light, yeah, it is acceptable, and that's the reality we live in. I don't make the rules, man. I just kind of.
I'm just saying, would you call it a success?
No, not when you have the roster
Exactly.
that the Bucs did. Not when you have Tom Brady, who decides to come back out of retirement. I know he didn't have too much of a choice in the matter and where he wanted to go, but he came out of retirement expecting this team to be ready to go on another title run. And all the way back in March, Bruce Arians retiring, quote unquote. That was kind of the first mistake of many when it came to this 22 Bucks team and I guess how they approached the season, because, obviously Tom Brady dealt with a lot of personal things in his life this year. We're not going to get into great detail about that because it's already been publicly talked about. But, stuff like that, you can imagine being a bit of a roadblock or a burden at some point in the season to one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, because at the end of the day, the guy is only human, and that affected him this year. But this 22 Bucks team was just, at the end of the day, the perfect cocktail of suck. Like they would build you up just enough to buy back in, and then they would completely shatter your hopes, right? The overtime loss in Cleveland, losing 35-0 to San Francisco, or 35-7, I think was the final score of that game. Yeah. I don't even remember if they scored a point. Yeah, they got a pity touchdown in garbage time. So with that being said, I kind of circle back. The joke's on us for thinking this team can make a run, right? Like, we should have been much more critical than we probably were at that point.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to like toot my own horn or yours, but I thought we were pretty critical. I mean, let's face the facts. They had a last-second touchdown against the Rams to win that game. They were down. They had a last-second touchdown against the Saints to win that game. They were down. And they tied up the game late against the Cardinals. All three of those teams are terrible. So, like, I mean, if all three of those are losses, I think you're probably talking about Todd Bowles being gone at this point, just because that would not be very good. So, I get it. Because like you said, you did see it at times. You just didn't see it enough. And at the end of the day, like, you want me honest, like, I picked the Bucs to beat Dallas. I wasn't picking them to beat San Francisco. Like, that wasn't going to happen. So I think either team, Dallas, I think is going to lose, San Francisco too. But it's just, this team was never going to go very far this year, just because we had the evidence right there. Now, did I think they would go out and perform better on Monday night? Yeah, I did. Like, didn't think it was going to be a blowout, obviously. But at the end of the day, like, what we saw last night was who the team was, in 17 games. Like, that's who they were pretty much. So the loss of the Steelers, the loss of the Panthers, like those two things, being down to the Cardinals in the first place, being down to the Rams, being down to the Saints, it's just, it's a microcosm of everything. And I think when you combine all that and what they showed last night, you sort of put it all together that, like, yeah, like this team, like, honestly, yeah, like you should have seen it coming, kind of. Like, last night shouldn't have been a surprise because, like I said, all the evidence, you had plenty of it. It was right there in the 17 games.
Yeah, it's a matter of how lifeless they looked. And let's kind of start to dive into this game. Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys. Bucs are at home. It is to wrap up Super Wild Card weekend in the NFL. It was an incredible slate of games over the weekend. And, we hyped up this matchup as well on our game preview show. We talked about how it's always a close game when they play. I know week one wasn't as close as a lot of people wanted to make it seem. 19-3, the final score in that one, in what feels like ages ago now. But, like, even though it was 19-3, maybe it was because of how sluggish the offense was. But, like, even that game felt close. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't feel over until sometime in the fourth quarter.
Because, again, just like you said, they couldn't turn. And we talked about this on the preview show, like, because we were talking about that game, and they were kicking too many field goals. They couldn't score touchdowns, or else that game would have been a blowout. But yeah, it was even the games that the Bucs dominated. The Falcons, the Bucs were up 21-0, I think, entering the fourth quarter, and the Bucs ended up winning 21-14, I think. Mm-hmm. Like all the games, Seattle, they were up big. Like every game they even had a comfortable lead. It never really felt like they never put a complete game together the entire season. Like, and we'll get into all of this as a whole, like you said, next week with a season review show where we talk about, pretty much, all the games as a whole. But, I mean, that Dallas game, just like you said, it was 19-3. It's multiple scores, but like still felt like, Bucs got to keep their foot on the gas. And, so.
Hey, Monday Night Football, despite Brett Maher trying his best to spot Tampa Bay some courtesy points, I mean, the guy went 0 for 18 on PATs. It felt like he couldn't make a damn kick in that stadium. I actually saw a highlight of Dak Prescott on the sideline saying, fuck it, let's start going for 2. He's like, I'm tired of seeing this. We need to start going for 2.
But then they kicked it the next touchdown.
Yeah. And
Makes sense.
Dak came out and publicly defended Maher after the game. So, I mean, it is what it is. They've got a game to play next week and the Bucs don't. So we start with what went wrong. The Buccaneers.
Everything.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I will tell you this. First couple drives of the game, it seemed like the same formula we've seen a lot with this team where they just cannot get themselves into games. You know, out of the gate, the defense played well enough to win.
First 2 drives, yeah.
Yeah, Dallas starts with a 3 and out. And then the Bucs come out with a 3 and out. Dallas comes out with a 3 and out. And then the Bucs continue to do that.
And then the Bucs go 3 and out.
Yeah, and then it seems like Tampa Bay just did that the entire game. You get shut out in the first half, and then you don't finally start to answer until the third quarter, fourth quarter, and then it's just too little too late at that point.
Yeah, the game's already decided. Yeah.
Let's talk about the offensive game plan from Byron Leftwich, a guy that we'll talk a little bit more about after the game. But is that the worst one we've seen all season? Like, am I being over dramatic, or am I seeing more and more plays being brought up on film where people are like, hey, what the fuck was this? Like, what even was the end goal here? Specifically the play design when Brady threw the end zone pick, which is really what turned the tide of the game.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the worst one, and that's saying something, but it was questionable. I mean, there's a lot of questions. I mean, credit to Dallas. I think Dallas is a solid defense, but like, they're not that good. You know, like they're not that good. So it was just a microcosm of everything. And like I said, we talk about you know, and people think we're defending the coaching staff and stuff like that. Look, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to come back. It comes back to player execution as well. But also, like, your coach has got to help you, man. And like the Bucs game plan just was awful. Like, it seemed like, you know, every screen the Bucs tried, sometimes the wide receiver screen would work, but I don't believe they completed the pass when they were trying to do a running back screen, because it seemed like Dallas just knew what was coming. So it's too predictable, it's too stale, and you know, and that's why, as we'll talk about, that's why there's going to be consequences for that. But yeah, just bad. I mean, you know, nobody played well on the offense. I mean, that obviously would have helped, but the play calling certainly did not help.
Yeah, we got a couple of comments on it in chat. People have been raving about that play design in the end zone, because when you look at the routes,
but again, though, here's the thing: we don't know exactly how it's designed.
Right, player execution is obviously a big part of it, and that wasn't as good as it should have been last night either. As far as the offensive game plan goes, though, I mean, the Bucs had to abandon ship pretty quick. We talked beforehand about how you're going to want to try and establish the run, because that's what helped you beat Dallas week 1 of 2022. And we know Leonard Fournette isn't running as healthy as he was week 1 of the season, but Rachaad White has carved out a role in this offense to where he can be effective. And he was actually effective. I think 7 or 8 carries for him, if I'm not mistaken, for 49 yards. 49 yards.
Yeah, you know,
somewhere just, around there, which is a pretty healthy average. You know what I mean? But Tom Brady threw the ball 66 times. So
you're not going to win.
You're not going to win. You know, 11 carries between your 2 rotational running backs and a 45-year-old Tom Brady chucking the rock 66 times. Excuse me, not even 44. 22 more than that. Yeah, that's just a recipe for disaster. And we have seen it, what feels like time and time again with this Bucs team so far this year. It was just another week where it felt like nothing changed. And for the most part, Dallas and their defense knew exactly what the Bucs were going to do. They telegraphed most everything.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think that's, you know, we talk about all the miscues from Brady, miscues from the receivers, the pass protection issues. We talk about the play calling and everything. I think the biggest thing that really sunk the Bucs, you know, for the season, but more specifically in this game, was the lack of run game. And it's just, you know, they haven't really had it. So yeah, it's bad, just bad.
Our buddy G Vegas, the moderator holding it down, says there was another play design where it was almost a pick. Mike Evans was running a cross route, and you had another receiver running to his same area. Saw it all year where separation was not designed. And I will say, as far as Mike Evans goes, we'll get into more detail in the review show. I know we keep sprinkling that in there, but Mike Evans, as good of a player as he is, one of my favorite Tampa Bay Buccaneers of all time. 2022 Mike Evans was not the Mike Evans.
This was the worst I've seen him.
I mean, this was not the same guy that we saw 2020, 2021, even years before that with other quarterbacks.
This is the worst year of his career in my book.
I think this broke him. Like, I really do.
He dropped another touchdown.
He did. I will say, maybe the TV broadcast made it seem like it wasn't as overthrown as it was. Listen, Mike had to turn it on to catch up to that thing.
He was able to get two hands on the ball.
He was. You're right. And I'm not making excuses.
Not one hand, two.
Not making excuses. It goes back to team execution, how no one's ever been on the same page this season. We saw one game of the glory days where Mike Evans racks up 200 plus and 3 touchdowns, but that's because he was abusing a rookie corner for most of his reps. And in Dallas, even though they had a corner problem, it obviously wasn't enough to hinder them in any way as far as preventing the Bucs from finding the end zone. So, oh man.
Let's go on to the man. Oh, actually, let's move on to the defense. Then we can get into that. So the defense, for as bad as we talked about the offense, the defense was equally as bad. Like, besides the first 2 drives, they had no idea what they were doing. None. Like, it's just there was. I mean, it's not even like there was some contested balls. Obviously, the Michael Gallup touchdown. I don't know how Carlton Davis doesn't pick that ball off. There was a few, like I said, there was a few contested balls, but so many broken coverages and busted coverages. Just guys running. I mean, the middle of the field was wide open. I thought the linebackers and safeties in this game were just terrible at covering the middle of the field. So, Dallas just abused that. So they had no idea where to go when they were in zone. When they were in man, the Cowboys just got just enough separation. And the biggest thing for me, like the absolute biggest thing, and this is like for the offseason, like this is what they're gonna need. Like there was zero pass rush.
None.
I mean,
whatsoever.
Nothing. They can't rush with 4 and get there. And then even when they tried to blitz, one, I don't think they blitzed enough. They didn't blitz enough last night. But also, even when they tried, they weren't getting there then. So like they need, and that's the troubling thing, because that was what they wanted last offseason. They said they need more pressure, more, the run defense being the best in the league is nice, but like they need more interior pressure, pass rushing wise. So that was their goal last offseason, and it's still a problem. I know not having Shaq Barrett hurts, but like they needed to be able to get home with 4, and Dak was just way too comfortable.
And I was more surprised by the lackluster performance from this defense than I was the offense. Once the second half came around and the Bucs still had 0 points, I hate to say it was expected, but it wasn't shocking, right? But once you started to see the defense just continually break down and give up these huge plays. I mean, Dalton Schultz was killing them, right? He was destroying them. And it's always been the seam routes. It's always been the tight ends for Tampa Bay. But Dalton Schultz was just fucking open when he had no business being open multiple times in this football game. Huge pickups from Michael Gallup. Huge play in the end zone, as you had said. CeeDee Lamb was having a monster day.
CeeDee Lamb with a wide open touchdown.
I mean, nobody within 5-10 yards of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. And, Todd Bowles talked a little bit about what went wrong, saying, well, they didn't adjust well. They didn't disguise very well. It seems like Dallas had a much better game plan than they had anticipated. And Dak Prescott going out there and playing a damn near perfect game is also going to help with that. And we said that was going to be one of the biggest X factors coming into this game, because 7 straight games with a pick is definitely no coincidence. But Dak surely cleaned that up on Monday night, and he let this defense pay.
Oh, he sure did. And, I think G Vegas said in the chat, multiple 3 and outs on your offense can do that for you. Here's the thing though. You can say that. And like we talked about how bad the offense was, like that's an issue. But at the same time, I think it would have been 4 or 5 straight drives that the defense didn't allow field goals. They allowed touchdowns. Like that's inexcusable. Like that's still bad. Like you can't even keep him out of the end zone one of those times. Force them to settle for a field goal with a kicker that was shaky. Like force them to settle for that, and you couldn't.
Shaky
You
is an
just,
understatement, man.
yeah, you couldn't. So, yeah, the offense was an issue and they didn't help out the defense, but also like you got to get a stop sometimes. Like you got to get a stop. And the defense did not get a stop until the game was pretty much already decided, besides the first 2 drives. So, I understand that the offense was an issue, but like this defense also has to be held accountable there.
Yeah, at a certain point, it felt like this team had just checked out. Guys were just trying to survive, get to the end of the game once they started to realize things were out of reach. I'd say around 18-0 is when it really started to feel like a loss for Tampa Bay.
And which, if you're down 18-0 and you feel like a loss, you guys are a bunch of losers.
Right, because you look at what happened. You look at what happened this weekend.
Yeah.
You look at the Chargers and the Jags. You look at all these other teams coming back from incredible deficits, even in the closing weeks of the regular season. Jeff Saturday and the Colts giving up 33 second-half unanswered points to the Vikings to make the largest comeback in NFL history. Not once did this game ever feel like any of those games where,
you knew the Bucs weren't coming.
Right. I mean, the optimistic side of me, and I'm sure everyone else watching the game is like, hey, we got Tom Brady. Still have a chance, right? Because
18-0. I thought they still had a chance. Once I got to 24, though.
Yeah. 24-0 was really the nail in the coffin, and that's when people started leaving the stadium. But we sat there and we watched it all the way to the bitter end, and I got to tell you, the second half of that game is the longest football game I've ever watched because nobody on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sideline or even the fans in the stands felt like wanted to be there. It was a soul-sucking atmosphere for sure. Before we go any further and talk about, Byron Leftwich, the future of Tom Brady, I wanted to circle back to the Mike Evans thing I had said earlier. I never really finished my thought, and I wanted to get your input on it. Ryan Jensen made his return for the offensive line, started at center for Tampa Bay, which was obviously great. I know we talked about the possibility of him switching positions, but that is not the case. Luke Gedeke rolled out as the starter at left guard. Ryan Jensen was back snapping to Tom Brady. It was good to see him again. The pop that he got when he ran out of the tunnel for warm-ups, man, it was pretty damn cool. And he was greeting all of his teammates during the official team introductions. Just a really, really cool moment for him. But as far as the entire offensive line goes, I think a lot of why Mike Evans has had what feels like a terrible season for his standards, Brady just didn't trust his line. I mean, there was one game this season against Carolina where he really felt comfortable stepping up into the pocket and taking those deep shots. I really don't remember the Bucs trying to stretch the field very much against Dallas, aside from that, that deep target to Mike Evans where he dropped it, and then the Julio Jones
ball,
the Julio Jones touchdown. Aside from that, I mean, really, when was Brady given enough time to step up in the pocket, feel comfortable to just let that thing go?
You could ask that question all year. Yeah,
I know. Well, one, guys weren't getting open, and two, people seem to forget when they talk a lot about wide receiver production in Tampa Bay, especially in 2022. Other people have come on the show and made this point. Other people have made it on other shows. But the fact of the matter is, Tom Brady is throwing the ball too soon. And, that's not to anybody's detriment because you want a quarterback to throw the ball not necessarily too soon, but as fast as possible, right? Makes it easier for your offensive line, kind of bolsters their stats a little bit. But a guy like Mike Evans just cannot get open in that myriad of time. And, I think it led to a lot of miscommunication where Mike maybe felt like he had to play faster than he was really going. And other times he just simply was not there, didn't have time to make the move or create separation, because Mike Evans is not a guy that's, gonna start out by getting you 3, 4, 5 yards of separation at the line of scrimmage. And it felt like when this offense was running through Mike Evans is when they played their best this year. And I mean, there was no effort at all to get him the football against Dallas, it felt like, but also because the time just wasn't there.
Yeah, and I think, that's not just for Mike Evans. That's that is every receiver there. And I think that's been an issue. And we talked about that a little bit towards the end of the season, that Brady just wasn't trusting the line enough. Yeah, it's not good, but dude, there's been times where you let that ball go too early. You could have held it on for another second, a second and a half, and done something with it. So in terms of Evans, yeah, he's a guy who's, he's not going to catch a quick slant and then take it for 20 yards. That's not his game. he can do those things on occasion, but like you're not going to game plan. Like that's not going to be your game plan for Mike Evans. That's not what he does. So yeah, like you need good offensive line play, and that comes back to my point on the defense not getting pressure. The Cowboys didn't get a sack on Tom Brady until the game was pretty much decided. Like they didn't get any sacks on Tom Brady until the game was decided, but they were getting pressure all night. So you see what pressure can do to a quarterback. It can wreck an entire offense. You don't need to get sacks, but if you get consistent pressure, snap in and snap out, it is going to affect the offense. It just is. And because the timing of everything gets thrown off, as you can see with the Bucs, you've seen it on more than one occasion this year with Tampa. So yeah, he, like you said, there was basically one half where he trusted his offensive line. You could almost say one quarter, the fourth quarter of that Carolina game. But yeah, besides that, it's just what would happen is the Bucs offensive line would be beat a few times early in the game. Brady would take a sack or get hit, and then after that, the game plan just changed, and he was getting the ball out so quick. And yeah, the return of Ryan Jensen, like I thought he was fine. Like he hasn't played football in like a year, so like I thought he was fine. But like, Luke Gedeke was actually decent to start or down towards the end of the game. But honestly, I thought like besides Tristan Wirfs, like I thought every player on the offensive line didn't play great. So yeah, Brady's got to trust it. And you can also scheme a little bit better to get Mike Evans the football in like 2 seconds. So you don't have to, Brady doesn't have to hold the ball long, but yeah, I do agree that part of the reason was on Tom Brady, and like like we criticize Brady, I think plenty. Like I think we pretty much call it how it is, and Brady was holding on to the ball too quick. Like he wasn't letting plays develop, and it was hurting the offense.
It's funny. Perfect time to remind you guys that this podcast is brought to you by our buddies over at betonline.ag. I'm sure there is a prop bet for it at this point, but I'm going to start making one because the amount of money that I could have made this season alone on guessing that we would get a weekly holding penalty from number 76, we got another one in a wild card round matchup with the Dallas Cowboys. So it could have been like, $10 to win 45 or whatever, but money's money, buddy.
Real quick about like Donovan Smith. Everybody's like, oh, he's got to go. Oh, he's got to go. Okay, tell me who are you replacing him with? And just move worse to left tackle. That's not an answer. So if you can tell me a plan that is realistic that you can replace him with someone who is better, please tell me, because they don't grow on trees. Like left tackles do not grow on trees. And Donovan Smith, like, yeah, he's not very good, but he's also he's not the worst left tackle in the NFL. Like there's a lot more bad tackles in the NFL than there are good ones.
I think Donovan Smith, by no means am I a Donovan Smith fan. I am with the outspoken majority that believe that there are other solutions at left tackle, but just like you said, you got to be realistic.
Yeah,
you got to be realistic. Right. Left tackles don't grow on trees. It's not like the Bucs are going to go out and cut them and sign somebody tomorrow. It's just not going to happen.
If there was, then they would. Like if it was easy to find, they would replace him, but it's not.
Yeah, by no means am I saying that, but Donovan Smith is an average left tackle, I think, who just had the worst season of his career.
He was bad this year.
He was bad this year. The spotlight was much bigger than it usually has been, especially when
he didn't have Ali Marpet.
Right. He didn't have Ali Marpet, didn't have Ryan Jensen next to him. The supporting cast that he had in 2021 made him a decent left tackle. But we remember back even in the days of Jameis where he struggled. Back in 2016, 2017, 2018, he struggled, man. And
but not this bad.
Yeah, but not this bad. This was his worst season by far.
And that's another reason the offense struggled. Mm-hmm. Mike Evans, I think, had his worst year of his career. Donovan Smith had his worst year of his career. Leonard Fournette wasn't very good. They didn't really have a solution at left guard. Chris Godwin was in and out. Julio Jones in and out. Russell Gage never really healthy the entire season. Tom Brady probably when he's a starter, like probably the worst year of his career. Just it was and combine that with the offensive coaching. This is kind of a perfect storm.
And you kind of forget at one point, as far as the offensive line goes, I think people kind of forget just how unhealthy the Bucs were at that position. Because today, for the first time since training camp, the media got to talk to Aaron Stinney, who was pretty much going to be your starting left guard. I mean, he made
Most
it clear
likely, yeah.
that he was fighting for that starting position against Luke Gedeke, and to be honest, I thought he was going to get the nod. We didn't hear from him the entire season because he was nowhere to be found. Just the depth that was missing in key positions, and then obviously player execution being another big part of it. I mean, the Bucs took risks that they really shouldn't have, but they were also put in a situation where you had no choice. You lose Ryan Jensen, you lose your starting left guard. What are you going to do? You're going to have to make the best of it. And I will say, I know I've been tearing a lot of people down on this show today, but hats off to Robert Hainsey. Full season
He
of
did
him.
a serviceable job, yeah.
Yeah, full season of him at center. This is a Bucs draft pick. This is a guy that eventually, if he wasn't playing, people were going to start to chirp, oh, another wasted draft pick. We drafted this guy just to sit on the bench. And as a depth piece, he stepped up this year, and
he'll compete for the left guard job.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
I don't really expect them to bring a starting caliber left guard, a guy that you look at, you're like, oh yeah, he's a starter. So I think it's going to be another competition probably.
All right, so let's talk about Tom Brady from Monday night. And
are we going to talk about the performance?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, there's not really much to talk about.
There really isn't, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this. We got we actually got an email during the show, so I don't know if he's watching live right now, but Highlight Jorge.
Appreciate the email. Don't get many email questions.
We don't. Actually, if you guys ever want to get in touch with us over there, cannonfirepodcast@gmail.com. Literally, I mean, hit us up about whatever you'd like.
We will answer it.
But the subject line here, Bucs embarrassed on a national stage, says, Tom Brady killed our initial good defensive momentum, and he played scared. Horrible, inaccurate passing, or horrible, inaccurate throwing instead of passing. His dink and dunk is what lost us games. So I'm not sure if that's, in the perspective of the entire season. I'm not sure if that's just Monday Night Football, but let me toss you his stat line from Monday night before I get your thoughts on what Jorge had said. So 35 for 66 for the GOAT, 351 yards total.
He still had 31 incompletions.
2 touchdowns and an interception with a 72.2 quarterback rating. Yeah, still 31 incompletions. So, I mean, I wanted to get your thoughts on Tom Brady from Monday Night Football, but I'll be honest with you, buddy, surface level evaluation, that just wasn't Tom Brady out there.
He wasn't very good. No, he wasn't very good. Especially like I said, early, he missed Gage on the one ball, and then like you said, he got happy feet, but he kind of got happy feet because he was under pressure a lot, and I mean it's gonna happen, especially with a quarterback who's not mobile. Like when you are a pocket passer, when you do your best work inside the pocket, like you're going to get happy feet. And he talked about the dink and dunk, like we kind of already addressed it. Like he didn't trust the offensive line, so the dink and dunk was the only thing available to him. So it sucks, but like he wasn't very good. I don't think he's been as bad as a lot of people say he has this season, but like last night he wasn't very good.
So in the grand scheme of things now, wanted to pivot and kind of talk about what the future may or may not hold for Tom Brady, because not only is it the episode of the podcast, but it is the $1 million question. More people care about this than the rest of the franchise and their future. And I think what the Bucs do in the offseason is obviously contingent on what happens with TB12. But what does the future hold for Tom Brady? Is this the end? I mean, I know that we kind of, have talked about this reluctantly the past 2 or 3 weeks because it's like it's not over till it's over, but here it is. Tom Brady, a free agent, and by March 15th, I believe his contract becomes $35 million in dead cap, which would be the second largest hit in history since the Atlanta Falcons had to eat $40 million of Matt Ryan's contract when he left. So the Bucs obviously want Tom Brady back. The question is, does he want to be back in Tampa Bay, or is there a realistic chance that he looks elsewhere? And let me just float this out there.
Or does he hang it up?
Or does he hang it up? Very true. The feeling that a lot of people get is that he's going to come back and play. I mean, Scott Reynolds said that today on Pat McAfee's show. The guy said it themselves. I've heard other podcasts talking about it. Everyone expects him to come back to play. Which is why it would be the perfect time for him to just go ahead and retire, right? I'm not saying he should, nor will he, but, the other scenarios people have brought up, a return to Tampa Bay in 2023, which in my opinion is the most likely. Him going to the Raiders to play for Josh McDaniels and be their new quarterback, which when you're playing Pat Mahomes and Justin Herbert and potentially Russell Wilson with a competent offense twice a year, that doesn't really sound like a place that Tom Brady's going to want to go to after having to survive the NFC South at 8-9. That's not a very easy division to win. Is he going to Miami to play and replace Tua, where the Dolphins have already doubled down and said that Tua is going to be their quarterback in 2023, but we know that the NFL is a business and things change all the time? Is he going to go have a one-year rental as a New England Patriot and retire there with a little...
I can tell you that's not
under Bill Belichick. I agree. I think people who think he'll be back in New England are living in fantasy land. Or is it going to be some other team that nobody expects? What does the future hold for Tom Brady, in your opinion, granted, everything that we know now? And we'll also maybe segue into Byron Leftwich after this. But, knowing what we know now, a day removed from the Buccaneers NFL season, what's going on with TB12?
Yeah, so I'm gonna sort of trust, what I see, and then also my gut on this. For if you guys have been listening to the show, I've been pretty confident really all season. I've been pretty confident all season when I've been asked about what Brady could do. I was pretty confident he's gonna retire. I was pretty confident, and now at this point, we're at the end of the season. Everything I've seen, just my gut and everything I read, I think he still retires, but I am like 51-49. He's retiring. It's close. I really do think it's close. The thing last night, like thanking the Tampa media and stuff, I don't put too much into that. Like, he hasn't made a decision yet. I don't think he hasn't made a decision at all. Like, we'll see. If he doesn't retire, I still do believe he is coming back to Tampa Bay. I think that's most likely. I think Miami would be pretty likely if they don't, if they're lying to everybody and Tua's not their guy. But I mean, they seem kind of like annoyed now with the questions. Like, yeah, they're like, yeah, we don't know how many times we had to say it. Like Tua is, and Tua was good this year. It's just, it all depends on his health. Like, do they believe in his health? Because when he was on the field, he was good. So, I'm not sure if you'd want to, because if Tom Brady goes there, like you're getting rid of Tua. You're not just going to have Tua ride the bench for a year. So, you're getting rid of him. So, it's tough. I think he retires. Just like I said, we talked about he didn't want the farewell tour. Everybody thinks he's playing at this point. Like everybody thinks just like you said, everybody thinks he's playing in 2023. So why not just hang it up now? You didn't get a farewell tour. That was it. But and I just keep coming back to, he's always said like he wanted to play until he's 45. He's done that now. So it's close. I think it's close. And we're not, and the thing is, we're going to be talking about this, for a while, because like Brady was pretty upset that it leaked before the Super Bowl last year. That's not going to happen again. So I wouldn't expect that for probably another month or so to know. And that's if he retires. Like if he doesn't retire, you're just not going to hear what his plan is until free agency starts. So I do think, the people that say, oh no, he's definitely not going back to Tampa. To me, you're just not paying close enough attention. You're not reading the right things. For a guy like that, okay, so Brady likes to win. Okay. You think you have a better chance to win another division than the NFC South? Like, do you see the Panthers or Falcons making huge leaps next year? Like, the Saints might be a little bit better, but like they don't have a first round pick this year. They are in salary cap trouble, as we have a $10 super chat from Willie Beeman. Hey fellas, if it were me, I'd try to pry away Bill O'Brien from Bama, make him the OC to get Brady for one last ride. I'm hearing fans want Bill out. If Todd doesn't work out, he can slide into the HC spot. Well, I don't know about the HC spot, but I do think Bill O'Brien is a legit candidate for the job. And that would be if Brady would be back. So I don't know. And I don't think Brady knows right now. So we can talk about this the whole time, but like the people that say, yeah, he's definitely not going back to Tampa. The Bucks have literally there's one like Tom Brady is the only free agent on the offensive side of the ball that's like a major free agent who's scheduled to be a free agent. Like that's it. Like Mike Evans is back, Chris Godwin is back, Ryan Jensen is healthy, like Leonard Fournette is back, Kate Otten continue to develop, Rashad White continue to develop, Russell Gage. They're going to get a different offensive coordinator. Like it's going to happen. So, if that's Bill O'Brien, why wouldn't Brady look at that and think that he can do a little bit better? And it's just the familiarity of it. Like that's the thing that I don't think people realize. Like if he goes somewhere else, that's not a lock that like it's all going to click. Like it is not a lock. So the grass isn't always greener. And I think Brady knows that. But ultimately, I think he decides to hang it up.
And if there's one thing the Bucks have proven that they are going to do, especially to keep Tom Brady in Tampa, they're going to bend over backwards for him.
Yes.
They're going to do whatever he wants. And if he comes to Jason Light or Todd Bowles and he says that he has every intention of playing in 2023, Brady's not going to be involved in the hiring process of a new offensive coordinator. But if they know he's going to be the quarterback in 2023, I think it's much easier to sell that to potential offensive coordinators than it is to come in for an interview and say, yeah, we don't really know what kind of offense we're going to be running.
Yeah, well, that's really the thing.
Unfortunately, Tom Brady's going to be here.
Unfortunately, unless you're waiting until March to hire an offensive coordinator, you're going to have to. Like, they're going to hire one here probably before the end of January. So I would say, yeah, like you're probably gonna. If it's Bill O'Brien, to me, that's a clear tell. Like if they hired Bill O'Brien, and the thing about Bill O'Brien is Rick Stroud even reported a few weeks ago that if Byron Leftwich took that Jacksonville job, they were going to hire Bill O'Brien. Like that was going to happen. So maybe it happens this time around. Who knows?
I had heard it mentioned today, and this is more of a fun hypothetical, but I do agree it is something that I personally would love to see happen just because it would be a lot of fun. A little reunion possibly down in Tampa Bay with a former offensive coordinator who just led the Georgia Bulldogs to 2 straight national championships. That is former OC Todd Monken, who called some plays in 2018. You remember back that New Orleans Week 1 game where Ryan Fitzpatrick had 3 straight 400-plus yard games. That was all Todd Monken running the offense. You want to talk about a guy who can open up another level of pushing the ball downfield and I think potentially get the most out of Tom Brady, who still has the arm to make the throws. Like, I'm not going to hear otherwise after this season. I know it wasn't his strongest season as a starting quarterback, but I mean, don't sit here and say that he's cooked or he's washed. I can't buy that. But Todd Monken back in Tampa Bay seems a little interesting. And there's a couple of connections that could be made. Nothing that's going to, win anybody over to make him think he is the guy for the job, but maybe someone to consider. Back-to-back national championships with Georgia. I mean, they have been perfect, right? What more can he really do? He's making, I think, $2 million a year at Georgia, and he could be ready to get back in the NFL and see a team that needs his services. He does have a connection to Todd Bowles because Todd Bowles' son is a linebacker at Georgia, so they have a line of communication there. And, I just feel like the timing would be right. I do. I really like Todd Monken while he was here. I thought he was a very underappreciated part of Dirk Cutter's staff, and that would be fun just to see a little reunion in Tampa Bay. Todd Bowles obviously still going to be around in 2023, but the offensive coordinator position up in the air. So we've talked a lot about new offensive coordinators. We have not once mentioned that Byron Leftwich is not officially fired, but reports have been floating around all day. Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report was the first one to have it said. Scott
Reynolds, when the clock hit zeros.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure Scott was probably told by whoever told him to wait until the season ended. So when the clock hit zero, I mean, literally, I'm not joking. The clock hit zeros and the story was published.
No, I agree. And he had been talking about this since the bye week. That's what his report said, is that the Bucs were considering a change at the bye week, but breaking the coaching tree and finding a successor to really bring that thing around for the end of the season just didn't seem very plausible for them. And
also,
that's
real quick, before we move on to Leftwich and everything, I can say Monken's possible. That's all I can say right now, but it's possible.
Yeah. Very exciting to think about. Matt Diaz in the chat. Scott was awesome on McAfee today. Shout out to Scott Reynolds of Pewter Report. I know that they are kind of the big dogs around here, but in my opinion, they are still local, homegrown media reporting on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And as far as McAfee goes, they could have chosen a Jenna Lane. They could have chosen a Greg Allman. They could have chosen a Rick Stroud.
They've already had Rick Stroud on. So.
Yeah, they did already have Stroud on once before, but it was really, really cool to see Pewter Report up there putting on for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat. And
but Reynolds and everybody here are real quick. People are freaking out. They're like, "Oh my God, Byron Leftwich is still the offensive coordinator." Like, why? Why? It's not even 24 hours since our season ended. Like, relax, okay? Like, it's okay. It's going to happen. Like, no Scott personally. Like, he's not gonna stick his neck out there and post something that ain't legit. Like, it's happening. Like it is. All right. Now, Todd Bowles always said, "Oh, there's been no decision." What's he supposed to say? Like, they haven't officially fired him yet. So, like, what's he supposed to say? Like, they weren't going to fire him this morning and then had Todd Bowles have to answer questions about, well, what are you looking for in your next offensive coordinator? They're not going to do that. So, the Charger season ended on Saturday night. They fired their offensive coordinator this morning. So, like, it's going to happen. Relax.
So here we are. We've kind of covered, potential offensive coordinator replacements. We've somewhat covered the future of Tom Brady.
And when Leftwich, if he officially does get fired, we'll probably do a show then, and we can break down a full list of potential guys.
Oh yeah, of course. We'll have much more to talk about between this week and next week as well. But as we start to kind of wrap this thing up, any closing thoughts on Super Wildcard Weekend, the 2022 season, Tom Brady is a Buccaneer? Like, what's weighing most on your mind right now?
Just a lot of, and I'm sure it's not just on my mind, but a lot of uncertainty. That's all. Because there's a lot of different directions that this could go. This can literally go in two of the most extreme directions possible. You could be looking to be a possible Super Bowl contender again, or you could be looking to, maybe sort of start rebuilding. And it all really depends on one man's decision. So, until you know that, it's tough to really figure anything out. So, and actually, real quick, I saw a few people in the chat talk about the, like you said, the dead cap hit. The best case scenario for Tampa Bay's cap is actually if Brady returns, because what they can do, they can sign him to a 1-year deal, and then they can have that cap hit be brought down by using more voidable years. Obviously, eventually, yes, they will have to eat that money, but for this year, they can bring that down and save about 15, 16, 17 million dollars on the cap if Brady were to return. If he retires, they can basically split up the money to where it's a little bit of dead cap this year, a little bit of dead cap next year. So that saves them a little bit of cap there. But then the real killer would be if he doesn't retire, but he goes to another team, because then they can't do anything. Then that is the dead cap, and they can't do it. They can't move that money at all. So just a little bit of information there that the best case scenario for the Bucs cap space wise is that Brady returns and they're able to bring his cap down and fill it with voidable years and stuff. But if he weren't, the worst case scenario for them would be, not only personnel wise, but also cap wise, would be him going to another team.
Yeah, this time 2 years ago, it's funny. We started the topic of what is a yearly conversation now in the Tom Brady era. How much longer can the Bucs afford to kick this can down the road? And just like you said, I mean, at the end of the day, realistically, as long as Tom Brady wants to play in Tampa, I think they can continue to kind of kick this can down the road. And as far as the uncertainty of the offseason, here we are, pretty much the same spot we were just a year ago. And it feels like I'm more prepared for it this time. You talked about the drastic
last year was
difference.
Just so sudden.
Well, last year it felt like we got a little bit of both of those experiences as far as the feeling of the offseason. You know what I'm saying? Because up until March of last year, we were fully convinced we were going to get 17 games of Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask, and we were prepared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were like, all right, here we go. This is going to be about as good as it gets. And then all of a sudden, Brady comes back, and it seemed like the offseason just full speed ahead.
Switch.
Yeah, you know what I mean? 200 miles per hour, signing this guy, bringing in this guy, taking the rights to get this guy, and bringing in Shaq Mason, bringing in Russell Gage, Logan Ryan, Keanu Neal. all of that started to come together, and it came together rather quickly. So with that being said, I am more prepared for this offseason emotionally and from a journalistic standpoint than I was just a year ago, because I feel like we have a little bit of experience in both the situations that the Bucs could find themselves at the end of this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said, it just everything last year was just so sudden. It was like a few days before the divisional game against the Rams. No, it was just before that you heard anything about Brady retiring. Like the expectation was always that he was coming back, and then he retired, and you're like, okay, well, I guess yeah, all right. So yeah, pretty much the whole month of February, and then the first half of March, you're like, all right, and then yeah, one move happens, and you're like, oh. All right, go time now. So, and that's what I'm saying about this offseason. Like, it's so crazy that, like, their offseason could be completely different based on one guy's decision. Like, it could be so different. Anybody doing a battle plan out there, you basically got to do two, because you got to do one with Brady and without Brady, because it's so different. Because if you have Tom Brady on your team, despite if fans don't think they got a shot or whatever, you give it a shot, right? If you have Brady on your team, you're going to give it a shot. So you're going to kick the can down the road a little bit more. So, but like if Brady's not back, do you make an effort to bring back Levante David, or do you just say, you know what, man, like, it's time for us to move on? Do you cut a guy like Leonard Fournette if Brady's not back? Do you cut a Donovan Smith if Brady's not back? So, I mean, who knows? We'll see what happens. One thing I will say that I'm actually optimistic about for next year is the offensive line. I know we talked about the offensive line struggling a lot. However, I'm a bit more optimistic about it next year with a fully healthy Ryan Jensen. Like Tristan Wirfs is still really good. Shaq Mason's still good. And then obviously left guard. Like I think Leverett was fine. Luke Gedeke, like, yeah, he really struggled this year, but like it's a second round pick still. So like there's talent there. Maybe he figures it out. Robert Hainsey was serviceable at center. I think he could be serviceable at left guard. And then hopefully Donovan Smith bounces back. So there's definitely things that have to go right. But like I'm pretty confident that this offensive line will at least be a little bit better than it was in 2022.
Yeah, and if Tom Brady ends up retiring, if he ends up going elsewhere, I do think that with all the guys on offense,
and by the way, no matter what Brady does, that's the offensive line. Like
all of those guys are under contract. All those guys under contract, 100% going to be here starting next season. And we talked about with the potential Brady departure, the guys that are still under contract to be in this offense. I know Mike Evans is going to be 31 years old, 31 years old. Like he's yet to not have a 1,000-yard receiver. But he can get it done for you, right? Chris Godwin really coming into his own. I thought he was playing some of his best football to round out the regular season, just bouncing back from that injury, continuing to get better. He's going to be
he'll be a year removed from that injury now. So
yeah. He'll be 100%, and I think he's going to look a little bit more worth the money.
Russell Gage,
Gage, by the way,
be healthy. Yeah.
Just
glad he's okay. He's okay.
Just an update. Scary injury to watch happen. Kind of the same issue that had plagued him after the touchdown against the Falcons in Week 18. He hits the ground, hits the back of his head, and immediately starts grabbing his back, and he's kind of rolling around, and it was not a good scene. Took him an extra minute to cart him off last night, and honestly, the stadium was really quiet. Yeah. A couple of guys obviously seemed shaken up. The game was well decided at that point as well.
Yeah. Very obviously, with what just happened recently, you sort of pay close attention to this kind of stuff. So glad to hear that Gage is okay and and everything's going to be okay, but definitely scary. A lot of people in the chat, yeah, I would personally, I'd cut Leonard Fournette either way because I think Rachaad White's is better. But I think if Brady were to return, I think he would want Fournette back. So I don't think they would get rid of Fournette if Brady were to return.
Yeah, and one more thing that we'll talk about before we wrap this thing up, with Tom Brady potentially coming back, I know that the talk of the Buccaneers cap situation is obviously going to be a factor because not only are you potentially kicking the can down the road with more void years, eventually more dead money you're going to have to eat, but the salary of everyone else, the Bucs have a lengthy list of free agents. But
Yeah, but like really, there's like three that are like a
Right.
priority.
Right.
You know,
And most of them are on the defensive side of the ball. We'll talk about that later on in the
yeah.
offseason.
There's going to be more changes on the defense side of the ball than the offensive side.
But let's not forget, even at 45, going to be 46 next season if he decides to play, even after a down year, the Tom Brady effect is still a real thing. And we have seen it happen time and time again, where players take cheap deals to come play with Brady. And it'll be interesting to see what this team looks like next year. You know, I don't think you're going to have a guy like Julio Jones. Rudolph is going to be gone. Cam Brate potentially played his last game as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. K. Dotton really starting to come into his own. There's a lot of changes that are going to be made. And the catalyst in all of it for our beloved Tampa Bay Buccaneers is whether Tom Brady decides to retire, move on to a different team, or return to his red and pewter teammates in 2023 for another shot at the Lombardi Trophy. But ladies and gentlemen, with all of that being said, that's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast, our final post-game recap podcast of the 2022 season. So that's going to put a cap on our regularly scheduled coverage during the 2022 NFL season. And I got to tell you guys, not only was this 8-9 season just exhausting, but you know, obviously some personal things happening in both of our lives took up some time this year, and that's not, you know, it's not a bad thing, obviously, but we did want to acknowledge it, and I think we should at least apologize to a certain degree. You know, towards the end of the season, we would plan podcasts, and then for one reason or another, whether it was scheduling or just miscommunication or whatever it was never anybody's fault. But sometimes things fell through, and I don't think we brought you guys the level of content that we have strived to do these past couple of years during the most important time of the season. And again, that's nobody's fault. But I just wanted to acknowledge it and let you guys know that we did officially make it. We are here at the end of the season. We reached the finish line. And
we appreciate you all.
Yeah, we really still really appreciate anyone who has ever decided to click on a hype video or check out the podcast or hang out in the live stream. All the moderators, G Vegas, Willie Beeman always holding it down with the $10 super chat. Emily Compa, Dark Angel, Andre Prasad, Goofy Khalid, a lot of regular familiar names in the chat. Black Crow Volume 2. I don't know why Volume 2 makes me laugh. Nestor Cervantes, sorry if I said that incorrectly. Our buddy Matt Diaz, the great guitarist from Florida State. I mean, a lot of people that we have connected with and talked to over the course of the last 3-4 seasons. And even the watch parties, you know, I know that those never went according to plan because we are officially 0-3 in watch parties. But
the future of that is TBD.
Yeah, right. We got a little bit of time to figure that out. But even the people that showed up to stuff like that, it truly does mean the world. And this little community that we have created, this is our 7th year. 2023 will be the 7th year of the Cannon Fire podcast, which is actually kind of incredible. In the grand scheme of things. Yeah, I know. We're getting old, man. But it's been a lot of fun, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Incredibly happy to have you guys on here with us, and excited for what the offseason brings, because it's going to be a lot of changes one way or the other. Evan, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, like obviously, appreciate everybody, and just like you said, there's some personal things that happen, and can't really do anything about it. But we try our best to to give you guys what you want, which is the best Bucks coverage possible. So I hope we're able to achieve that for you guys. And I mean, we're obviously not going away, but it's just the shows will be, instead of 2 or 3 times a week, maybe once a week. There might be a week where there is no show because there's just not much to talk about. So obviously, if there's any breaking news, James showing up right at the last second, of course, if there's only if there's breaking news, we'll obviously be right there to cover it. So just want to thank all you guys for all the support and everything. And
Ladies and gentlemen, with all that being said, that's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire podcast. Subscribe to the channel for more great Tampa Bay Buccaneers content if you have not already. Getting excited to bring you some of the latest news of the offseason. We'll do our best to keep you updated on all of that and more as it happens. You can also check out the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show and Tampa Bay Buck news as it happens. Speaking of Tampa Bay news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucks_Daily, the #1 Buccaneers fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucksNation.com. I don't know if you've got the stock report coming out this week, because, I mean, it's hard to put stock in players who aren't going to have a game next week. But what have you got cooking for the end of the season?
Yeah, so actually I have two things out right now, posted them today. So one is ranking Tom Brady's potential destinations for 2023. I take a look and just rank them, not based on likelihood, but like based on like how I think like what's the best fit for him. Like what would be best. So ranking that. And then also I have 3 burning questions off-season edition, where I just take a look at 3 things. And I acknowledge, even in the article, yes, I know there are a lot more than 3 questions, but limited it to 3. So take a look at them on bucksnation.com. And I'll also probably have a little sneak peek for you guys. I'm planning on, I had to, around the midseason mark, I did rookie grades. So I'm planning on doing the complete rookie grades now. And that should be hopefully in the next few days.
Should be some good stuff. Remember to go check that out at SB Nation's BucksNation.com. Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. It might not be as prompt as it usually is on Twitter, because the end of football season, especially one as disappointing as this, means I have to take my yearly Twitter hibernation, because that app is going to drive me insane. People might actually be brain damaged on there. And it's always a perfect time to remind me when I see a tweet that says I would rather have Josh Freeman as our quarterback than Tom Brady. That's my yearly reminder to go ahead and take some time off. So hit me up over there. I will be back eventually, and I'll be sure to follow you back. But ladies and gents, that is the show. And once again, that's a cap on the 2022 season of coverage for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We are excited to bring you all the latest updates on what should be an eventful Buccaneers offseason, one way or the other. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you so much for listening, and go Bucs.